Hello and welcome to the Wellness and Empowerment Virtual Summit 2020. And today we're so lucky to be joined by a very special guest speaker. Her name is Cheri Roberto, who will be discussing the topic emotional wellness, how to cope with grief and loss. Cheri Roberto is a wounded healer heading the Morning to Morning Ministry, which is the pioneer grief support group of the Feast family founded by Bro Sanchez. She is also the author of the book Morning to Morning, Your Partner in Grief and Hope, and is a contributing writer for Dita Care, Daily Reflections, and Kerygma magazine. Cheri has been invited to speak at several retreats, recollections, and forums, and also facilitates for her grief support group regular meetings, talks, and workshops. An interior designer by profession, Cheri is most proud of being the mama of her two precious sons, Bam Garcia and the late Bruce Garcia. Hello and welcome, Cheri, to the Wellness and Empowerment Virtual Summit.
Helen, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for inviting me to this Wellness and Empowerment Virtual Summit. It's my pleasure.
And first off, could you please tell us a bit about yourself and your grief and loss story?
Okay, so yes, I'm Cheri Roberto. Okay, let me share the screen. Okay, so I'm Cheri Roberto, and professionally, I'm an interior designer. I have my own design firm called Roberto Design House. And I head the grief support group called Morning to Morning Ministry. I'm also an author and a speaker. And I also facilitate, as you said, some recollections and talks and retreats for our grief support group. But most importantly, I'm a mom. So these are my two boys. These are my two awesome boys. I've been a single mom for about 14 years already. And so tumayo akong nanay at tatay ng dalawang batang ito. So on the right is my eldest son, Bam. He just turned 29. Yeah, and imagine that. And to the left is my baby boy, Bruce. So he's my bunso and he's 6 years younger than Bam. So, may konting kwento ako about Bruce. So this is Brucey and I always call him my baby boy. And at 14 years old, he was so tall already. He was like 6 feet, almost 6 feet. And he had like an afro. He had long curly hair. So past 6 feet pa siya. And then he was a really funny guy. Sometimes I'd call him baby boy. And then he would just answer mama girl. And then as the years pass, these teens, alam mo naman, these teenagers, they're hardly at home. They're off with their barkada. And it was okay with me as long as we'd have our hug and love in time. And our hug and love in time is when either at night before we go to sleep or in the morning in my bed, my son Bruce, he would go and cuddle with me, and then yung sisiksik niya yung head niya sa kilikili ko or on my shoulder, and yeah, the boys would just give me sandwich kisses, and sometimes ayun, he would wrap his long and lanky legs on top of my legs, and then we'd call his big brother, Kuya Bam, hug and love in time. So he would come in, and then I have my two boys right beside me, and they're giving me sandwich kisses, and then I would think that everything I need to be happy fits right here in my bed. And then kahit kunin ako ng Diyos, siguro at that time I would die a happy woman. So life was pretty good, even if it was just the three of us. It was not perfect, but we were happy. Um, then one day, back in 2012, it was summer. I had a phone call. It was 4 o'clock in the morning, and phone calls made at 4 o'clock in the morning isn't really good news. And it was my good friend, Anna. She was the mom of the best friend of Bruce. And she was crying and she was hysterical and she was saying, um, please, please come to please come to this street in our village. Something happened. And she was crying and she was unconsolable. And then the phone, before I got to ask what happened, the line just got cut off. And so, dali-dalian akong tumayo, bumangon, and that was 4 o'clock in the morning. So I drove by myself in the dark, going to this street that she told me. And when I got there, it was 4 o'clock in the morning. There were so many people. There was a commotion happening. There on the street there was a tape, the yellow tape that says "Do not cross," the ones that you only see in the news or in TV crime scene movies. And then I saw my Brucey. He was face down on the pavement. Uh, it was every mom's nightmare. Uh, he had a big gash on his head. His nose was bleeding. His arm was really bent. It was dislocated, and I could see that it wasn't good. But I looked at the left side, and then there was another boy, and it was his best friend, and there was more blood. And then I saw on the other side there was another boy, and then I said, "What happened?" And it was another friend of his, and there was more blood. And then I looked to the other side, and then that's when I saw there was a car that was a total wreck. And I found out that he and 3 of his friends were in that car accident, and all 14 age friends died. And that was the night when I lost my Bruce. He was the youngest of the 4 friends at 14 years old. And he was my youngest son out of my 2 boys. He was my bunso. He was my sweet and loving baby boy. And he liked to sing, he liked to dance, he loved laughing, gave the biggest and best hugs. And then in an instant, he was gone. So today, I make sure before my older son Bam goes out of the house, I say I love you and I give him a big hug, because you never know when it's the last time you're going to see him. Sometimes it really takes a life-changing event for you to fully surrender to God and trust in Him completely. Wala ka nang magagawa kundi kumapit sa Kanya. I miss my son. Napakasakit talaga mawalan ng anak. And I never felt a pain like this. I never thought that it existed, that yung parang kinakrush talaga yung puso mo and you can't breathe and you have all these anxieties. In the first year, halos di ako makatulog sa kakaiyak. And when I'd wake up, ayokong bumangon. And I just didn't want to face the reality of not having my boy beside me. And I just wanted to curl up into a ball and marinate in my grief. Sabi ko, sana kunin niyo na lang ako. Kunin mo na rin ako, because that pain is just too much for anyone to bear. Pero sabi nga, instead of counting the days, let's make our days count. And so just like a patient looking for a cure for an illness, I longed for healing from the pain of my loss. And so I accepted, and I was very open And I wanted to be very active in the recovery of my grief. So um, I accepted all the help offered to me. I read all the books on grief. I went to counseling. I went to retreats, recollections, even seminars on grief. And I continued going to the feast, which is my spiritual family, and that filled my soul. And I attended grief support groups. And one of those grief support groups was called INA, the INA Foundation, which is short for mga inang naulila sa anak, which is founded by Tita Gina de Venecia, who also lost her daughter. And then, so I go to their meetings, and sometimes in the next Christmas party, and it was just 6 months that had passed when my son passed away. So there was a party, and everyone was kind of happy, and I was saying, why are they happy? Didn't they just all lose their kids? So nakikiride on na lang ako, and then one of the moms there said, so how are you? And just with that question, biglang bubos yung aking tears. And then I said, it doesn't seem to be getting better. And then she said, but it will. It will get better. And at that time, I thought that was impossible. And that gave me something to look forward to. And it gave me hope. So I'll stop there muna.
So you founded a grief recovery support group called Mourning to Mourning Ministry. Could you please give
Yes.
more information about how can people who are interested join your group?
Okay. So back in 2014, 2 years after my son's accident, our feast leader, Brother Arun Gogna, he asked me to share my story in the Holy Week recollection and the Phil Invest tent. And I knew it was a big deal because there were like 4,000 people attending. So kahit na kinabahan ako, I said yes. And when I finished my sharing to around mga 4,000 people, biglang sabi nila bumaha na daw ng luha sa tent. And I didn't really know how many hearts would be touched that day, but it really gave me that push to let God use me to serve Him. Ang galing nga ni God because He really does not waste your pain. Oh, there. He doesn't waste your pain. And because just a few months later, I was asked to head the first grief support group in the Feast, Alabang, and the whole Light of Jesus family. And yeah, it's called M2M, which is short for Morning to Morning, our ministry. Or sa Tagalog, pagluluksa hanggang makarating sa mas magandang umaga. In our M2M ministry, sinasamahan namin yung mga nag-grieve because we know, we make them feel that they're not alone. Kasi grief can be such a lonely and confusing and unbearable time, lalo na kapag nag-iisa ka. And then, who best to journey with you than those who are in the same path that you've been. And ang galing din talaga ni Lord kasi He made me realize my mission and my purpose in life, which is to be a wounded healer. And sabi nga ni Rick Warren, your greatest ministry will come out of your deepest hurt or pain. Yeah. And so, what do we do? Oops. Ayan. So, what do we do here in our meetings? We have meetings once or twice a month, and then we have our chat groups. We have our Viber, our Messenger chat groups. We hold annual retreats, recollections, and talks, and we're just there for each other, and we lift each other up. Yun. And then, so how to join? You can just maybe later after the talk, I can show that slide again.
Okay.
So there.
So this pandemic has claimed the lives of many. Can you please share some tips on how to cope with the sudden loss and grief of a loved one?
Okay. So I made a list of 5 things to remember when you're grieving. Of course, there's not just 5, but let me share with you. Number 1, allow yourself to cry. So sabi ni Father Dave Concepcion, one of my favorite priests, God did not promise that you will not cry, but He will be there to wipe your tears. There. So, don't you notice how much better you feel after a good cry? Yeah, because tears are really healing. So you shouldn't really stop your tears. As they say, cry and cry until you're dry. And if you keep it all in, it's like a pressure cooker, and one day, nako, you just might explode. So, number 2 is keep a journal. Maya Angelou said that there is no agony like bearing an untold story inside of you. And another favorite author of mine, Kathleen O'Hara, she said na while our stories are painful to tell, it is ultimately more painful to keep them locked up inside. So it's good to write your story of loss. You don't really have to be a, a good writer. I mean, it's just for you. It's for you. It's for God. You don't need perfect uh, grammar or spelling. As long as you get to express how you are feeling. And sometimes also in my journal, I write to God. I make letters to God. Why? Parang doon ko binubuhos yung lahat ng tampo ko, lahat ng questions ko. And then I also write to my son, actually. I bring my journal to his crypt, and then sometimes I write there. So, Bruce, what's happening? Your friends, they're graduating already. Oh, what would you be doing now if you were in this pandemic? Or anything. I miss you. And it's good to just express it and get it out of your head so that it doesn't keep playing and playing in your mind. And it's good. It's very cathartic also. It it there's a weight that lifts whenever you write. So hingahan, and it's good to ventilate all your feelings and express it into something. Um, Number 3 is don't do this alone. So find confidence that you can talk to your best friend, someone you can cry to, someone who will listen without judgment or will not give unsolicited advice. Alam na natin yung mga nakakainis na, oh, bakit hindi ka pa mag-move on or whatever. But you cannot move on. You just move forward. And you just carry on. So just find someone who will be there for you. Maybe a priest, maybe a pastor, counselor, preacher, therapist, uh, your small groups in your community. And of course, that's where M2M also comes in, our ministry, our grief support ministry, because we listen to your story and we understand, because they say nga, you won't know how it feels until you've walked in their shoes. And these are the people who have been through what you are going through. And so number 4 is be kind to yourself. So if you've been through the trauma of loss, allow your body to rest and recuperate. Because nobody told me that it's so draining to be to to be to go through the wake and through everything. It's so tiring, and you're still going through shock, and there's so much sorrow. So if you want to take the day off and just sleep, go ahead. I mean, if work permits, and take care of your body, because as they say nga, when you've lost someone, it's either tataba ka or papayat ka. So yung mga pumapayat, mga walang gana na kumain, yung mga tumataba, uh, that was me. I ate my sorrows away. I gained around 30 pounds. I ate everything and anything. And sabi ko, ano ba, yan na lang aking kaligayahan ko, pagbabawalan niyo pa ba ako? But it really damages your whole being not to take care of yourself and not to eat well and not to have any exercise. One day, actually, I had such a terrible pain in my tummy, and my son had to bring me to the ER. And then he was saying, Mama, please don't die. And then it just hit me that, of course, this boy is going through the same thing that I am, and he's going through his own grief. And I I never realized na what will happen to him if I am gone. So I really had to take care of myself. It was a wake-up call. So eventually I had to have some surgery because I had some gallbladder, gallbladder stones, gallstones, and they had to take out my gallbladder. And so after that, ayan, nagpakabait na ako. I ate healthier. I did some exercises, and it helps to do exercises that you like. Like for me, it was ballet because I used to dance ballet before. So I did that. I did some yoga, and any physical activity. Maybe if you like boxing, tennis, biking, or even expressing um, your grief in other ways is also very good. Like be creative, and if you're artsy, you can do paint, you can draw, you can garden, scrapbooking, anything to express your grief. And you do something that makes you happy. It Whether it was just going to the movies or doing karaoke or just spending time with your movie night with your kids, and then you schedule it. You really have to schedule it in your day or your week. They said, yeah, you have to be deliberate with your happiness. So number 5 is, of course, go to God. G to G. That's what I'd say to my kids. G to G. What am I gonna do? G to G. Go to God. So for me, nagbabad ako sa Adoration Chapel. This was our date spot, me and God. Of course, now it's hard to go to the Adoration Chapel. So I suggest you create a little space in your home, make a little altar with a crucifix, with Mama Mary, maybe a little candle, and just be with Him. Make it your sacred space na kayong dalawa lang, a quiet place for you to go to. So, me naman in the Adoration Chapel, yun, doon ako nagtatampo kay Lord eh. Nagtatampo ako. I'd ask so many questions at first. Sabi ko, are you punishing me ba? Bait naman ako ah. Wala naman akong sinasaktan na tao. There are so many other people who are so bad. Why didn't you do this to them? And then why my Brucey? He was so young. He was so good. He was so full of life. He had so many dreams. And then that's also where I'd cry my eyes out. And then I'd say, um, Lord, sa'yo na lang po lahat ng sakit na to. Hindi ko na po kaya. Pagod na ako. Kunin mo na rin lahat ng luha ko na parang hindi siya maubos-ubos. And that was my way of surrendering. I'd imagine giving God a little box where all my pain was, and I'd offer it to Him, and He'd gladly take it from me. And then sasabihin ko, payakap naman, Lord. And then I would feel Him hugging me and saying, tahan na anak, nandito lang ako. And then I'd imagine also my Bruce on the other side, and then kami naman ang nag-group hug, kami naman ang nag-hug and loving. And then, ang sarap because I'd come out of the adoration with so much peace. Sobrang kapayapaan that everything will be all right. And it doesn't take away your grief, but it lifts it. Mas magaan. So those are my 5 reminders. Number 1, allow yourself to cry. Number 2, keep a journal. Number 3, don't do this alone. Number 4, be kind to yourself. And 5, go to God, G. Actually, there's so much more that I want to share, like the need for gratitude, forgiveness, not holding on to what ifs. But maybe you can buy my book. And
yes,
yeah,
and speaking of which,
more about it.
Yes. So you've written a book entitled From Mourning to Mourning. Can you please tell us a bit about it, and where can people get a copy of your book?
Okay. So, feeling ko nautusan na naman ako ni Lord. He said, you have to reach out to more people. And so again, after much struggling, I said yes. And then the book, From Mourning to Mourning, Your Partner in Grief and Hope, was born. Mourning to Mourning is, again, pagluluksa hanggang makarating sa mas magandang umaga. There you go. Wait a minute. There. So since it's launching 3 years ago, it's reached more people here in Manila, in the Philippines. And then it's even gone to all the corners of the world, actually, and which has made my M2M family grow even bigger. I mentioned earlier that we have our monthly Zoom meetings. Now it's Zoom meetings, and I think it's a silver lining of this pandemic that we have to just make our meetings through Zoom, and actually it's more accessible to people around the world. So whenever we have our Zoom meeting now, international kami, there's someone from Guam, there's someone from Germany, someone from Qatar, someone from all parts of the US, and there's someone from Hawaii. So, and from here naman, before we were just confined to Alabang, the Alabang area, but now people from Baguio, from other provinces can join us. So, if we're speaking to OFWs, you're very much welcome to join us. And kung nagluluksa po kayo. So since our launching 2 years ago, magyayabang lang ako ng konti because it's been a blessing because the book was even nominated for a Cardinal Sin Catholic Book Award. So that was such a high, and it was such an honor. So I'd like to share also my idols. Yan. So here are my books. My books. Here are my idols, my spiritual rock stars. And they have supported, inspired, mentored, and encouraged me. And they gave advice, and they shared their precious time with me and our ministry.
Mm-mm.
And it's true that when God sends you out into war, He will not send you empty handed.
Mm-mm.
He'll always send you the right people, and He'll give you the right platforms, and He'll give you, I mean, you're just a channel, eh? So you're just His voice, you're just His voice
Mm-mm.
box, you're just His pen, and it's all Him.
Mm-mm. I
So,
see familiar faces here.
yes,
Brother
yes,
Bo, that's Brother Bo, right?
yeah, yes, Brother
Brother.
Bo, Brother Arun,
Mm-mm.
yes, our preachers from the feast,
Mm-mm.
some of my favorite priests, Father Dennis,
Mm-mm.
Father Bob,
Mm-mm.
Father Felioni,
Mm-mm.
and down here is my dad. He's
Mm-mm.
my number one supporter also.
Mm-mm.
Doc Pidoy, he gave before the pandemic, 1 week before the pandemic, the lockdown, he gave recollection for us. So, and Risa is my editor and my friend. She's also my client.
Mm-mm.
So, talagang hindi ka pababayaan ni God. Yun. And, of course, ito ang number one supporter ko. Ang gwapo niya dyan, ano? This is how I like seeing Jesus. Like, he's just gazing at me. And this is how I imagine him when he's putting his arm around me and saying, you know what? Everything's gonna be all right. So, all the comfort and the healing and the love that I received from him, um, it was now my turn to give to others. Yeah. Sabi nga ni Ken Yasinski, um, we're not supposed to be like a reservoir where we just keep all the graces and the blessings and the healings for ourselves, but we should be more like a river and let the healing flow. And the healing that we receive, we have to share and give. So I'm able to do this just because he loved me first. And also in my grief journey, I learned that as the years pass, the grief never really goes away, but it evolves. It evolves into something easier to carry. Um, it fades into the background, but uh, it's not anymore the focus of your day. Kathleen O'Hara, one of my favorite authors, she said, the best way to honor your beloved is to live the best life that you can. And then ang sa akin naman, it doesn't really mean that you don't love them anymore or you've stopped loving them or you've forgotten about them. That's a big fear from everyone. I'm scared that I might forget. But actually, it's impossible to forget such a great love. But you continue to love them by loving others in need, others who need you. And that's how your beloved lives on. I want to share what Brother Bo said. Hmm, there you go. Yeah. He said, when God heals your wounds, He takes away the hurt and the harm, but He allows a scar to remain so through it, you can heal others who have the same wounds. And that's what He calls the wounded healer. Ayan. So, this grief and loss that you've experienced, it may be the saddest and most painful chapter in your life, but remember, God isn't finished writing your story. So, that's that's it. Oh, I'd like to share pala my okay, so because of this pandemic, there's so many grieving. There's so many grieving. So my book has been out of stock. It's been out of stock, the hard copy, the physical copy. But you can get my book, my ebook, through this link. Facebook, sorry ang haba because I am an affiliate. So if you order through this link, you'll also be helping me.
Mhm.
And so yun, ebooks na lang po ang ang available.
Available.
Pasensya na po. Yes.
Mhm, mhm.
So there. And then if you'd like to join our Morning to Morning ministry, you can message me. Please like and follow our Facebook page, which is Morning to Morning Ministry. And or I actually prefer email. You can email me at cheriroberto@gmail.com. So yeah, that's it.
So there you have it. Thank you so much, Cherry, for sharing such an insightful and wonderful talk about grief and loss. Such an honor having you here at the Wellness and Empowerment Virtual Summit 2020. God bless and more power to you.
Thank you and God bless.